You keep trying to fix her because you're running from your own brokenness. Schopenhauer. You see her pain. You want to heal it. You believe if you just love her enough, support her enough, understand her enough, you can change the story. But Schopenhauer warns, the impulse to save someone else is often a disguise for avoiding your own wounds. You stay busy repairing her cracks because facing your own feels too terrifying, too vulnerable, too lonely. In this video, we explore Schopenhauer's quiet revealing truth about why men get trapped in the cycle of trying to fix emotionally broken women. You'll learn how this pattern not only harms you, but also prevents real intimacy, growth, and healing. And most importantly, you'll discover how to break free and start facing your own pain with courage. Subscribe if you're ready to stop fixing others and start healing yourself. Like and comment if you've ever felt trapped in this cycle and want out. Here's where the entire illusion collapses. Schopenhauer would look you in the eye and tell you the truth you've avoided all along. You were never meant to heal her. You were meant to heal yourself. The belief that saving her will save you was always a lie. A beautiful, seductive, exhausting lie. No matter how much you love her, no matter how much you give, no matter how patient, supportive, understanding you try to be, her healing isn't yours to manage. Her growth isn't your responsibility. Her chaos isn't your mission. And the moment you finally accept that, something profound happens. The weight lifts. The heaviness starts to dissolve. Because the battle you were fighting and was never about her. It was always about the war inside yourself. You thought being her savior would make you worthy, but it didn't. It just made you tired. You thought being needed would make you feel seen, but it didn't. It just made you invisible. You thought that if you carried her brokenness long enough, it would somehow fix the emptiness inside you. But it never did. Because emptiness can't be filled from the outside, it never could. And it never will, Schopenhauer would say. The man who finally puts down the burden of saving others begins the real work of saving himself. And that work is harder, it's lonelier, it's quieter. Because it doesn't come with applause. No one cheers for the man who sets boundaries. No one congratulates the man who walks away from dysfunction. No one rewards the man who finally says, I am not responsible for fixing what is not mine. But that man sleeps at night. That man breathes again. That man looks in the mirror and finally recognizes himself, not as a fixer, not as a savior, not as someone's emotional crutch, but as a man. And that man, he's not loved for what he does for others. He's loved for who he is. And that's the only kind of love that ever really mattered. You thought loving her would heal you. You thought being needed would finally fill the void. You told yourself that if you could fix her, if you could stabilize her chaos, soothe her pain, mend her wounds, then everything inside you would quiet. Then you'd finally feel safe, finally feel seen, finally feel like enough. But Schopenhauer would tell you the truth you've avoided your entire life. You were never trying to fix her. You were trying to fix yourself without ever facing yourself. And that's the tragedy. You built your worth on being useful, on being the emotional caretaker, on being the man who shows up, holds space, absorbs pain, sacrifices himself. And the cruel irony? The more you did that, the more invisible you became. The more you tried to save her, the more you lost yourself. Because you weren't showing up as a man. You were showing up as a function, as a tool, as an emotional safety net for someone who was never yours to save. And when you finally wake up to that, when the illusion breaks, it's devastating. You realize how much of yourself you handed away, how many boundaries you erased, how many moments you silenced, your own truth, swallowed your own needs and called it love. But Schopenhauer would say, that wasn't love. That was self-abandonment wrapped in the costume of devotion. And it was never going to work. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were never meant to carry someone else's healing on your back. The real work was never out there. It was never in her brokenness. It was always in yours. The emptiness you tried to outrun by fixing her was the emptiness of a man who doesn't believe he is worthy without being needed. The anxiety you drowned in her chaos was the anxiety of a man who never learned how to sit in silence with himself. The exhaustion you felt wasn't from carrying her. It was from abandoning yourself over and over again. And the way out, it isn't complicated, but it is hard. It's the choice to finally stop, to lay it down, to look yourself in the mirror and say, her healing is not my job. Her chaos is not my responsibility. Her wounds are not mine to mend. It's the decision to walk away not just from her, but from the man you became when you believed that your only value was being someone's savior. Because here's the truth Schopenhauer would leave you with. The man who no longer needs to be needed becomes the man who is truly free. The man who stops performing for love, stops trading his peace for approval, stops sacrificing his soul for proximity, becomes the man who can finally be loved for who he is, not for what he fixes, not for what he does, not for what he provides, but simply because his presence is enough. And when that man emerges, whole, grounded, unapologetically sovereign, everything changes. He stops attracting chaos. He stops tolerating dysfunction. He stops mistaking being needed for being loved. And the love that finds him, it's clean, it's honest, it's reciprocal, it's real. Subscribe if you're done rescuing and ready to rescue yourself. Like and comment if you've ever lost yourself trying to fix someone else. And you're finally done. Because the man who puts down the role of savior picks up the only thing that ever really mattered, himself. It starts with the best of intentions. You meet her, you see her pain, her sadness, her emotional chaos, and something inside you whispers, I can help, I can fix this, I can save her. You start pouring yourself into her life, supporting, soothing, advising, hoping that if you just love her hard enough, consistently enough, patiently enough, she'll heal, she'll transform, she'll finally become the partner you believe she could be. But Schopenhauer would tell you a truth that cuts deeper. You're not saving her. You're avoiding your own pain. This isn't about her healing. It's about you running from the emptiness that surfaces when you're alone. Running from the questions you've been avoiding. Who am I without someone to fix? What happens if I stop pouring into her and start facing my own wounds? And that's the part no one teaches men to see. How the obsession with fixing others is a brilliant disguise for refusing to sit with themselves. Because the truth is, her brokenness feels familiar. It mirrors something inside you. Her chaos reflects your own disconnection. Her inconsistency echoes the parts of you that you haven't healed. And so instead of looking inward, you look at her. You project your need for healing onto her life. You convince yourself that saving her is noble, that it's love. But Schopenhauer would say, it's self-abandonment dressed up as devotion. And the more you focus on her wounds, the more you neglect your own. You become so busy managing her emotions, her dysfunction, her crises, that you never pause to ask, why am I drawn to this? Because if you did, the answer would terrify you. You're drawn to it because fixing her is easier than fixing yourself, because her problems are a distraction from yours, because as long as her life is a mess, you never have to face the silence of your own. This is why the pattern repeats, why you find yourself attracted to women who are emotionally unavailable, unstable, or wounded. It's not a coincidence. It's a strategy, an unconscious strategy to avoid sitting alone with the parts of you that feel unworthy, unseen, unloved. Schopenhauer would call it the will's desperate trick. If I can just heal her, maybe I'll finally feel whole. But that trick always fails, because no amount of fixing someone else will ever fix the emptiness inside you. You tell yourself it's love. You tell yourself it's patience. You tell yourself it's compassion. But Schopenhauer would cut through all those narratives and say, it's distraction. A distraction from the fact that you don't know how to face yourself. Her brokenness gives you a purpose. Her chaos keeps you busy. Her emotional dysfunction keeps you so focused outward that you never have to look inward. And that's the cruel irony. Her chaos feels safer than your own silence. As long as you're managing her drama, you don't have to sit with your loneliness. You don't have to feel the emptiness that creeps in when no one else is around to fix. You don't have to ask yourself the hardest question a man can face. If I'm not rescuing someone, then who am I? This is why you tolerate things you know are wrong. Why you make excuses for behaviors that violate your own boundaries. Why you stay when every part of you knows you should walk. Because walking away doesn't just mean losing her. It means losing the shield she provides from the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. And the thought of facing that feels unbearable. Schopenhauer would argue, the will attaches to suffering when suffering feels more familiar than solitude. You're not addicted to her. You're addicted to what fixing her allows you to avoid. Her inconsistency covers your fear of not being chosen. Her emotional volatility distracts you from your own lack of internal peace. Her rejection keeps you from having to confront the way you've been rejecting yourself for years. And the brutal truth? She was never yours to fix. She's an adult with her own path, her own choices, her own pain to face. And every time you try to rescue her, you're not just avoiding yourself, you're robbing her of her own responsibility. You're interfering with her growth as much as you're stunting your own. But here's what hurts even more. She knows. She feels it. On a subconscious level, she knows that your care isn't fully about her. It's about you. About your need to be needed. About your fear of being irrelevant. About your quiet terror of being left alone with nothing to rescue and no one to fix. And the more you try to save her, the more repelling your energy becomes. Because what feels like love to you starts to feel like pressure to her. Schopenhauer would say, "The man who cannot sit with his own suffering will always try to fix it in others." But suffering cannot be outsourced. It cannot be solved in someone else's life. It must be met, faced, and transcended inside you. There's a darker layer most men refuse to see. You think you're helping her, supporting her, being her rock. But Schopenhauer would tell you you're not her healer. You've become her escape plan. She's not growing because she doesn't have to. Your endless patience, your constant emotional labor, your readiness to rescue, gives her permission to avoid herself just like you're avoiding yourself. You think the solution is to love her harder, to be more patient, to endure more chaos. But every time you step in to soften her consequences, to clean up her mess, to hold space for her dysfunction, you confirm a dangerous truth. She doesn't have to change. You'll change for her. And once that dynamic is in place, you stop being her partner. You become her emotional crutch. And here's the brutal twist. You resent it. You start noticing how drained you are, how invisible your needs have become, how one-sided every conversation feels. You start wondering, does she even care about me, or does she just care about what I do for her? But the truth? You trained her for this. You taught her that your role is to carry the emotional weight of both people, that your value isn't in your presence, it's in your utility. And while part of you hates it, another part clings to it, because being the fixer is familiar. It's predictable. It gives you a sense of identity. If I'm not fixing her, then what am I here for? But that identity comes with a cost. A slow, suffocating erosion of self-respect. A quiet realization that every time you put her needs above your own, you confirm a belief you've carried for years. I am only valuable if I'm useful. Schopenhauer would argue this isn't love. This is codependency masquerading as devotion. And the tragedy is that while you believe you're saving her, you're actually enabling both of you to stay stuck. You keep her from growing, and you keep yourself from healing. Because as long as the focus is on her chaos, neither of you ever has to confront the real problem, the emptiness inside you that no amount of saving can ever fill. At some point, the exhaustion becomes impossible to ignore. You start waking up heavy, not because of her words, not because of her actions, but because of the slow, suffocating realization that you traded something sacred, your self-respect, for the illusion of being needed. Schopenhauer would call this one of the most tragic forms of suffering. The man who willingly abandons himself in hopes that someone else's healing will finally validate his worth. You became the problem solver, the caretaker, the fixer. But here's the truth that haunts you. She never asked for that. Not with words, not directly, but you stepped into the role anyway. Not because she demanded it, but because somewhere deep inside you believed that your value had to be earned, that simply being present, being whole, being yourself, wasn't enough. And every time you showed up to solve her problems, you taught her, my boundaries don't matter, my needs are secondary, my discomfort is irrelevant. You told her, without ever saying it out loud, walk over me as much as you need to. I will carry it. And the worst part? You called it love. You convinced yourself that sacrificing your peace was proof of your devotion. But Schopenhauer would shatter that illusion with brutal simplicity. Love that costs you yourself is not love. It's self-betrayal. And the more you betray yourself, the more disconnected you become from her, from reality, from your own soul. You stop recognizing the man in the mirror, not because she broke you, but because you slowly dismantled yourself trying to fix her, and she feels it. Whether she admits it or not, she senses the quiet resentment behind your patience, the unspoken bitterness behind your care, the exhaustion behind every attempt to show up as her emotional safety net. And that's why, paradoxically, the more you give, the less she respects it. Not because she's cruel, but because you taught her to see your sacrifice as normal, as expected. As the baseline of the relationship, Schopenhauer would say, when a man abandons his sovereignty, the world stops seeing him, not out of malice, but because he stopped showing up as someone worth being seen. The fixer is not a man in her eyes. He's a function, a role, a utility. And nothing kills attraction faster than a man who traded his presence for performance.